We are thrilled to celebrate our 25th with the guy who has 25 number ones. Ladies and gentlemen, Enrique Iglesias.
Enrique Iglesias.
I just wrote songs that I felt in that moment that I loved. I remember perfectly shopping around my first demo with songs like Si Tú Te Vas, and the first response from a lot of record companies was that, this is very simple, not a lot of chords. They thought lyrically they just thought it was too, their word was, what they always say was, it's too simple. I don't know if this is gonna work. For me, I loved them because I thought it was honest. I think there's an honesty to that music. That's why I still love it. I'm not saying the songs are good or bad, but there was an honesty to it, and that's one thing you can't fake. And I think ultimately that's what made the album become successful.
One of the things that surprised me about this first album is that there's a couple of tracks by Rafael Pérez Botija.
Correct.
But the rest are yours.
I never really set out to be a singer. For me, it was about songwriting first and foremost, because I knew, I've always said this in a lot of my interviews, that I wasn't the best student in school. Let's just say when it came down to homework, I wouldn't really concentrate as much. I could do it for an hour, half an hour, but I would immediately want to move on. So I had a little bit of ADD, but when it came down to music, I still have a little bit of ADD, but when it came down to songwriting, I could sit down and I could do it for hours. I mean, when I say hours, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, stay up all night writing songs, and I loved it. I just was very passionate about it, and it was a way to, especially at that age of 13, 14, 15, it was therapy.
Going back to your first albums, they were on Fonovisa, which is like the regional Mexican label, really,
Correct.
And they had very few pop acts. So let me ask you, why you even signed with Fonovisa in the first place?
Sorry I cut you off a little bit, but the reason why I signed with Fonovisa, first of all, because it's the only record company that wanted to sign me at the time. Ironically, I was rejected by MCA at the time, which is now Universal, and by a few other major record labels. But it just made me stronger. And at the time, Fonovisa got my demo. Guillermo Santizo, the president at the time, reacted to it. He liked it. They called me. And it's funny you asked this, because I remember not knowing who Fonovisa was at the time and picking up a Billboard magazine and checking out the top 30 songs and noticing that they had, out of the top 30 songs, they had 20 on the chart. So I was like, they must know what they're doing. And sometimes these are things you can't really plan in your career. They happen for a reason. And I'm so thankful that I ended up in that label, because I got to meet, my manager right now, Fernando Giacardi, which has been my manager for many years, for the last 15 years of my career.
Since you were 8.
Since 2000, 14 years. But I met him back in 1995 because he worked for Fonovisa.
And so then you do 3 albums with them, and then you have the opportunity to do a song like Bailamos. So,
yeah.
Tell us about that transition. You say it was a musical transition, but also kind of a direction, career transition.
It was a musical transition, and the reason why I say the English, singing in English wasn't so much for me, so much of a transition. The reason why I say this is because my first demo also had songs that I had written in English when I was a kid. So growing up in Miami, I was born in Madrid, Spain, moved here when I was 8 years old, and I grew up speaking Spanglish, speaking both languages, English and Spanish. I've always said I don't speak perfect Spanish, which to me is very obvious, and I don't speak perfect English, which I'm sure to a lot of you is very obvious. But I felt comfortable in both languages when it came down to songwriting. So I think in English, think in Spanish, dream in English, dream in Spanish. So for me, it just became, it was logical that I would do it sooner or later. Writing songs with other writers is sometimes not easy, because I think there's songs that are not personal, and maybe it's not tough, but when it's a personal song, it becomes a little tougher, because you're technically talking, a lot of times it can be a little embarrassing, so you gotta get over that, and that took me time to get used to.
But that's funny, because you say it's embarrassing, but you're going to get up and you're going to sing the song in front of millions of people are going to hear this very personal song.
Yeah, but I remember the first time I listened to one of my songs on the radio. I was actually, again, here in Miami, and I was in the car by myself, and it was Si Tú Te Vas. I was probably the most embarrassing moment of my life to me, because I remember being in the car and just pulling over and thinking, oh shit, I can't believe people are listening to this song that I wrote when I was 16, that felt to me that it was something so personal that I wrote, that I know who I wrote it to. So I was thinking, oh, I hope that person doesn't know I wrote it to her.
You wanted to take it all back.
Oh my God, I was extremely embarrassing. It was like but at the same time, I was proud, I was happy, but it was very embarrassing.
It must be like somebody reading your diary, right?
A little bit, yes. Actually, a little bit, no, a lot. A lot of my songs I write, maybe I shouldn't say this, but the truth is, I don't really play an instrument, but most of the songs that I write is listening to other people's songs, and hopefully I don't get sued for saying this, but but the truth is that I was always a fan of music. I listen to all types of music, and when I hear a chord progression that I like, I usually try to come up with my own melodies and my own lyrics, and I say, okay, this is what I would have done if I was playing those chords.
What are you trying to accomplish in the song? Like, or in your opinion, what makes these songs so effective in radio? ¿Qué es lo que haces? Like when you're writing a song, what do you try to do so that it works? El precoro a tal tiempo, un coro así.
I write songs and I make music to satisfy myself. Mm-hmm. And because I think that's the right way of doing it. If you try to write a hit or to follow what's going on, a lot of times you'll go nuts and you'll never get there. You know, because trust me, there's a lot of songs out there that I wish that I listened to on the radio. I'm like, I wish I would have written that. And every time I try to follow that or try to copy one of those songs, it never comes out right. It's extremely difficult. So you got to go with your gut. You got to go with what you feel is right. And I think, and the reason why I say I make music to satisfy myself, is because I think the fans know if you're being honest or you're not being honest when you put a song out there.